Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, with my top 5 games of 2022. The games that gave my soul such joy, such triumph, such enthusiasm, and most importantly, left a lasting impression on me in the most positive of ways. Now I must preface this with two things. One, this list is chronologically based on release. It is not based on what game I like the most. It isn't a 1 to 5 in terms of what I thought was the best and what I thought was the worst of the best. Also, it must be noted that this is my personal opinion. This is not a definitive be-all, end-all list that says that this is the top 5 games of 2022, because personally I haven't played everything that came out in 2022. I can't give you that type of list. All I can give you is my opinion and my thoughts and my top 5 of the games that I played this year and I enjoyed the most. A majority of these games I did first impressions of, so you can look through the YouTube channel and see all of the first impressions that I had of these games. See if my mind even changed on some of the first impressions that I had. Was it better or was it worse than what I experienced when I first played it? First up is Soulful, and even though I said that this list isn't from best to worst or worst of the best, this was, until the last game on this list, my favorite game of 2022. It held a spot that lasted almost the entire year. And one of the main reasons for that is the fact that Soulful is a 3D third-person beat-em-up, where you take a character, either a man or a woman, depending on who you pick, and try to avenge the death of your Soulful, with a combat style and gameplay mechanics that is rooted on not only memorization of the enemy attack patterns, but also understanding the level layout because of how tough and numerous some of these enemies can be. It was one of the most challenging games of 2022. That was until they released the update that allowed for an easy mode for players who didn't have the tenacity or the determination to try to overcome a lot of what is the root base of Soulful's gameplay. And one of the main systems is the fact that if you die, you get older. And once you reach age 80, it's over. It's game over. You have to start all over again. Now, here's the thing about aging in Soulful is the fact that as you get older, you get more powerful. But as you get older, you also get weaker in terms of how much damage you can take. So it was a catch-22. You could respawn and get older, or you can maybe just go back and start the level over again as a younger self and try to learn from your mistakes so you can try to be the best player possible at the youngest age, so when you get into the later missions you have a lot more lives to spare instead of trying to be a glass cannon as you progress through, say, stage 2 at age 45. As I said, Soulful was one of the most challenging experiences I had in 2022. I thoroughly enjoyed not only the gameplay but also the aesthetics, the art style, the sound, the visuals. It was one of the most surprising games that I played in 2022, not just because of how fun it is and how rewarding it was to overcome such tough adversaries, but also just getting to see what the developers had in mind when it came to differentiating the levels and the design choices. That really left an indelible mark on me and has me really wanting a Soulful 2 or something from Slowclap, the developers behind the game, so I can just get more of this type of a video game. Next up is easily the biggest surprise of 2022 for me. Another game that has some challenge to it, though it does have some definite difficulty spikes, and that is Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. This game was made by Koei Tecmo's Team Ninja, and really, as you would expect from a Team Ninja game, has a difficulty system that definitely challenges the player. But unlike Soulful, where you have a single player game, this is actually a multiplayer experience if you choose to take advantage of the multiplayer aspect. But if you don't, you still have a team dynamic where you take control of Jack and the search for chaos, which became a running meme in 2022 until the game came out and people actually enjoyed what was, for me, when I played the demo, a solid but unspectacular experience. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the full game itself delivered on not only the gameplay, which sees you being able to fight these rather difficult enemies in an action-oriented RPG environment based off of the original Final Fantasy, And I think that is one of the biggest reasons I enjoyed the game so much, because as you progress and you see how the story unfolds, it actually becomes a lot more profound in how it affects not only the original Final Fantasy, but also the Final Fantasy lore that we've gotten to know and hopefully love if you're a fan of the Final Fantasy franchise. It was an interesting take on not only the genre, but also the Final Fantasy franchise. Add that to the fact that you have this really fun gameplay system that allows for you to mix and match physical attacks with a loot and gear system that's complemented by a magic system that is based on a weapon wheel selection choice, and some impressive boss fights, except for the final boss, which I really hated because they actually take away your team. You're able to play with the team the entire game until the final boss for the first time. You can actually repeat any mission in the game, but in this case, when you fight the boss for the first time, you unfortunately have to play against the boss by yourself, which of course could be a very excruciating and mind-numbing boss fight depending on how well you're set up. But beyond all of that, Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, one of the biggest surprises of 2022 for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed playing it. I thoroughly enjoyed the challenge. I actually enjoyed going back and redoing missions to see how my gear loadout and the job system that the game was rooted in would be able to help complement my advantages or disadvantages against certain enemies in certain environments. Next up is another big surprise that I had in terms of not only enjoying it, but how much time I put into it. As I saw my PlayStation wrap up, my most played online game of the year was Evil Dead the game. The 4v1 asymmetrical online multiplayer experience based off of the Evil Dead franchise provided me with some of the most enjoyable moments I had this year, specifically because similar to Dead by Daylight and not Friday the 13th or even the most recent Dragon Ball The Breakers, which is also another asymmetrical horror experience, even though it's a Dragon Ball game and one of my also favorite games of the year, though it didn't make the list, is the fact that Evil Dead the game allows for the player to play as one of the demons instead of just playing as the survivor. So as the game just launched, there were 3 different types of demons, including Evil Ash, but my favorite was Henrietta, the Warlord class. It provided me some of the most harrowing online experiences I had all year. The only big drawback about the game is that the player base fell off pretty quickly, mostly because of the lack of updates until later on. I believe it was like July or August when we finally got the first major update. But by then a lot of the player base had fallen off. So it was unfortunate because it was getting harder to get games started, especially if you're specializing in playing as a demon instead of one of the survivors. But before all of that, I was having a blast with Evil Dead the game, and hopefully I'll go back to it and see that maybe the community is in a lot better shape than it was the last time I tried to play it. Next up is Stray. Now, Stray isn't the most revolutionary game, it isn't the most surprising game, it isn't the most, dare I say, mechanically inclined game, because there are some flaws to it, especially when it comes to the platforming, which is what a majority of the game is. But there is an emotional heart and depth to Stray, as crazy as this may sound, as you're playing as a simple cat in a post-apocalyptic world where robots have taken on the sentient ideas and lives and society of human beings. But one of the main reasons why Stray stuck out, and most importantly is highly regarded as one of the best games of 2022, is the relationship between whatever you named your cat and B12, the hovering talking robot, and not only accompanies the cat but also discovers a piece of his lost memories. And as you progress, especially if you are a trophy hunter or a collectible hunter and you're able to find all the pieces to B12's memories, the final chapter just feels that much more riveting and that much more enlightening, because now you have the full picture of what B12 had to go through to get to the point that it was at, and essentially where society was at before everything fell apart. As I said, Stray doesn't really revolutionize anything besides the fact it does a very good job of portraying a digital cat and giving players the ability to play as a digital cat. But the story and the essence and the heart of Stray is really one of a kind. And I was surprised. This is one of the few games that I will admit got me emotional by the final chapter, though I wish it would have lasted a little bit longer. It felt a little rushed with that final chapter, but it still packed a wallop, and I am so happy that I was able to take a chance and play it because I heard so many good reviews about it, and then it's kind of faded into the ether. Nobody really talked about it anymore after that first month or so after the release, until the Game Awards. And thankfully, hopefully, more people do play it because it is an emotional journey that is well worth your time. And last but not least, speaking of emotional journeys, God of War Ragnarok. God of War 2018 was one of my favorite games of that year. Actually, it was my favorite game of that year. And I was looking forward to the day of playing Ragnarok, not just because I wanted to see how the story panned out between Kratos and Atreus and their inevitable confrontation with Thor, as it was teased at the secret ending at the end of the 2018 version, but how they would expand, how we would be able to visit the 9 realms, as they very much showed in the 2018 version that we were going to get that, but we just could not get it right then, and thankfully we got it all and then some. But the main thing that I wanted was just a better playing version of God of War 2018, and I enjoyed the gameplay of 2018. But there were definitely some things that I wanted more from it, and thankfully I got all of that in Ragnarok, and then some, topped off by the fact that it had this magnificent story, characterization, and most importantly, the expansion of the world that we are a part of in this game. There's a definite reason why this was battling Elden Ring for Game of the Year in various forms, because not only does it surpass everything that the original did, it is setting a new standard for the franchise going forward, and whatever they do next, if it's anything half as good as this, I will be right there for it. I'll be so happy to play it. But if it's not, if this is the end of Kratos' journey as we know it, what a ride it's been. Like, this was a magnificent experience from top to bottom, and one of the things I must note, I will say this before I close out on praising God of War Ragnarok, this is one of the few games that I will say that after finishing it, after finishing the main story, and doing the extra stuff after the main story, and pretty much trying to 100% complete this game, it's one of the few games I ever felt where doing everything made the experience that much more rewarding. Not because of what I got, not because of the challenge per se, but it just felt like a more complete package than I already thought it was when it was all said and done. Just masterful. I cannot give God of War Ragnarok enough praise, and it is definitely not only worthy of a spot on the top 5 games of 2022, but for me personally, it is my favorite game of 2022. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, with my top 5 games of 2022. I hope you all have a wonderful 2023. We're looking forward to not only a great year of gaming, but also a great year in life in general. I wish nothing but the best for you, and thank you for all of the support, all of the watches, all of the views, all of the comments, and here's to a great 2023. Oh, Lordy.